Can everybody hear me okay? I prefer not to use a microphone because, you know, I'm half Italian and I have to talk with my hands, so.
That's it. Yeah.
So welcome, thank you for coming today. Are you guys inspired from this weekend or what?
Yes.
This has been an amazing weekend. My name is Maria. Some of you guys may know me as the host of Chicks Chat Radio. When I'm not hosting Chicks Chat Radio, my passion is that I am a nurse, I'm a wellness facilitator, and I am the owner of Healing Heart, Healing Arts from the Heart. And today, as you can see, our topic is going to be following the breadcrumbs and about my personal journey of following those breadcrumbs and reclaiming my personal power. I don't know about you, but when I hear that tagline of following the breadcrumbs, what comes to my mind is the story of Hansel and Gretel. And in that story, Hansel had put breadcrumbs out with the intention that he would be able to follow them home. Well, in my story, following my breadcrumbs so that I was able to follow them back home in my mind, body, and spirit, allowing me to reclaim my personal power, transform my life, the life of my family, and the lives of people around the world. When you hear that story, you wonder, how can you follow breadcrumbs? I don't really know how that really works. But really what it is being able to, we talked about this morning, Julie talked about it this morning, getting out of our own way, right? And have you guys ever heard the saying, I'm having one of those days, right? I'm sure you guys all said that at one time of your life. Well, here's the thing, I didn't used to say that. I used to say, I didn't have one of those days, I had one of those lives. Because everything that bad could happen and would happen always happened to me. My life was a continual cycle of trauma and drama. But it didn't start out that way. When I was 18 years old, how are you when you're 18? You're getting ready to graduate high school, the world is your oyster, anything is possible, right? The sky's the limit. I mean, heck, I was co-captain of the cheerleading squad. I was student class president, and I was the prom queen, and guess what? I married the prom king. So you would think with a story that started like that, I absolutely had to have a happy ending. But you would be wrong. Just much like Hansel and Gretel, I got lost in the woods of life. And instead of coming upon a witch, I came upon a prom king. A prom king that turned into a monster. I spent the next 10 years of my life living in fear. I spent the next 10 years of my life living in a violent and extremely abusive relationship. I honestly did not believe I would get out alive. And to add to that fear, he had family in law enforcement. I was unable to go to shelters because law enforcement knows where all of the shelters are. When I got an order of protection, he was able to violate it over and over and over again with no repercussions. But beyond all of that, one day I did find the courage and the strength to leave. And when I did that, I found myself alone with the clothes on my back, only a high school education. I had 2 children. I had very limited resources. And statistics said that I was likely to repeat the same abuse in another relationship, and another relationship, and another relationship. Well, guess what? I was not going to be a statistic. But how do I change that? How do I change that story? How do I make a change in my life? Not only for my benefit, but for the benefit of my children. I could not bring them through another dysfunctional relationship. I couldn't do that to them. And who's to say I'd get out alive the next time? How was I going to do that? One of the things I started to notice was, you know what? I'm going to go into healthcare. I want to be a nurse. You know why I want to be a nurse? Because I figure if I'm right in there on the front line, I'm going to be able to figure this out. I'm going to be able to get well, get healthy. I mean, when I left that relationship, I had severe PTSD. I was depressed, suicidal. I wasn't sleeping. My hair was falling out. Let's face it, I was a hot mess. But I needed help, and I didn't know how else to do that. Well, even though I became a nurse, I quickly realized I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. I'm doing the therapy, taking the meds. I'm doing all of these things. How come I'm not feeling well yet? I also looked around at my patients and they weren't feeling well yet either. I knew we had to be missing something, but what was it? I eventually found a breadcrumb that led me to energy medicine. And I quickly started to learn about the energy system. Listen, as a nurse, I've learned about the cardiovascular system, the skeletal system, the endocrine system, a list of all of those systems. The one system that was the huge impact in all of our lives was our human energy system, and nobody was talking about that. It doesn't only affect our body, but it affects our whole way of being. And I realized this is the key that we've been missing. And just like any other system in your body, if you do not take care of that system, you become unwell. I still didn't know how I could change that. I wasn't really sure what are all of the pieces of that. And I realized as I'm going through nursing school and I start getting jobs, I'm still having these problems. I'm still having all of these pieces that aren't falling together. And another breadcrumb came to me. Wherever you go, you take your stories with you. Haven't we heard a lot about that this weekend, about our personal stories? Well, I didn't have just a little carry-on. Oh no, I had a steamer trunk full of stories. And that steamer trunk was just filled with all of this stuff. But I had to make an important and conscious choice to find out, are those stories even mine? What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to write down on your paper 3 things that you think you are not. Are you not an artist? Are you not a dancer, a singer? Are you not good with money or a cook or a baker? Whatever that is. And if you can't come up with 3, it's not a big deal. There's no wrong here. But I want you to think about those things. And I'm going to challenge that a little bit later.
Somebody's handing up.
Yep, oh, I was right behind you. So while you're thinking and writing, I'm going to give you a little story, and you guys may have heard this, and my peeps have heard this before, is a story I heard growing up all of the time. And it's a story about roast beef. Have anybody ever heard that story about the roast beef? Okay. So this girl is at home, and she's making a roast beef.
A what?
A roast beef.
Oh,
Okay? And so she's got this roast, and she cuts off the ends of the roast, and she puts it in the pan. And here's now this little roast in this huge pan, and she's sitting there going, gosh, this just seems like such a waste. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? So she looks at her mom, and she goes, why do we cut the ends off the roast? And her mom's like, I have no idea. She's like, that's how my mom always did it. So then her mom goes, you know what, I'm going to ask my mom. So she calls up her mom, why do we cut off the ends of the roast? I have no idea. They have good genes in their family, so, she was able to call the other mom. And she's like, well, I only had a really small pan. So to fit the roast in the pan, I had to cut the ends off. But generation after generation after generation followed that story, that pattern. So think about what you wrote on your paper. What of those stories are you telling yourself that are not true? I can tell you that for many, many years, I told people, I am not an artist. There's not an artistic bone in my body, that if I drew a stick figure, you would still need a map to figure out what the anatomical pieces were to this stick figure. And people would always challenge me about that. They're like, you're not an artist, are you sure? I mean, I can't believe you're not an artist. I'm like, there's no artistic bones here. But one day, I chose something different. I made a conscious choice to try to paint. And I used painting as a wellness tool. And, oh, guess what, guys? I'm an artist. And now I teach art as a transformational tool for healing and wellness. So I challenge you to look at that list and say, what am I telling myself that I am not? That was another huge breadcrumb for me. What am I telling myself every single day that I am not? Am I not successful? I can't have, I mean, we all have that chatter, right? In our brain, that chatter from either our subconscious that tells us we're not good enough. Who do we think we are? How can we possibly do that? I don't know about yours, but my voices sound like the guys from the Muppet Show, you know, the ones that sit up in the balcony. Yeah, that's the voice I hear. So how do we change those things in our life? One of the ways, like I said, was I made some conscious choices. And Jules said it this morning, when we are able to allow that flow into our body, right? And we allow ourselves to move out of the way and challenge the things that we truly believe are truth, we open up a path for us to a whole brand new life that we could never even have imagined. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be standing here talking to a group of people today, I would have told you were crazy. But even crazier than that, when I started doing this work, I worked on myself first. And what I found out was how trauma and drama totally take place in our body and manifest into physical symptoms. Mm-hmm. I suffered from chronic pain all of my life. And several years ago, it had gotten to the point where I was having severe mobility issues. I was having problems going from sitting to standing. I was a nurse. I had to be on my feet. And I was really starting to contemplate whether or not I could continue being a nurse. Well, I happened to start doing this energy medicine, doing different techniques and working in different avenues of energy medicine. And one of the trainings I was taking, another student and I, we were working on each other, and she was doing an assessment on me. And one of the questions was, do you have chronic pain? Yes, I have chronic pain. And she's asking other questions, and she finally comes up to this last question, and she's like, well, have you ever sustained any significant trauma? Really? Yeah, how much time do you have? What do you want to know? And she's like, when was the first time you ever experienced a significant trauma? Without even thinking, I said I was 5 years old. I was sexually molested when I was 5 years old. And she said, when did you start having pain? 5 years old. I allowed that trauma to manifest physical symptoms in my body that were taking over my life. That breadcrumb changed my life completely. Because at that moment as a nurse, I worked most of my career with veterans. And I realized if anybody has trauma and drama in their life, it's veterans. And these veterans were coming back and having all of these significant symptoms that modern medicine wasn't. I mean, I'm going to tell you, and any veteran can tell you this, I mean, the statistics are out there. When veterans were coming back from this last war, the rate of addiction from prescription medications rose over 300%. 300%! We're not doing something right, we're missing something. And when I stepped out of the way and allowed myself to be into this work, my goal, my mission, was to change the healthcare system inside the VA system. And I started working on veterans. And they were having significant changes. My very first veteran that I ever worked on, which I have this published out there, the world, severe pain on every narcotic you can imagine. Always at a 10, no matter how many narcotics they took. Had limited mobility, used a wheelchair very often because their mobility was extremely impaired. They got on the table and we did our work. At the end, they stood up at the side of the table and were bawling their eyes out and said, "You don't understand. I am at a 0. They had so much trauma that was living inside of their body that they had been carrying around. And that relief lasted them for over a week. I saw them the next week and they were like, I feel amazing. You know, I moved furniture around in my house. I slept in my bed for the first time. And it was so funny because after the session, this person went out into the hallway and stopped every single doctor and patient in the hallway and said, no, 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 no. You have to see what I can do. I can move my arms. I can touch my toes. Because they couldn't even believe something so simple and effective could make such a huge transformation in their life. So this is the kind of work that we can do to really make conscious transformations in our lives and allow ourselves to live infinite possibilities. Imagine those ways that you can do that for yourself. And sometimes that's really hard, right? You know, I truly believe that we all have this internal GPS, right? That gives us these breadcrumbs that we're allowed to follow, that lead us to this life that we've always wanted. But because of all of our conditioning, and because we're in a society now where this little box that we have in our hand at all times is deluging us with so much information, it really becomes hard to hear that internal voice. It really becomes hard for us to personally identify those breadcrumbs that lead us on a path to happiness, wholeness, and wellness. So when we are able to identify those barriers and break down those barriers, we open up so many new possibilities for ourselves. So what I'd like to do for you guys today, again, is I'd really like for you to challenge yourself and look at that list that you wrote yourself and say, what is that truth for me, right? Is this truly my truth? And how can I explore these new possibilities? Life can be so different than what you're thinking of now. When we go from relationship to relationship and it's failing, and we carry our money stories around with us, and we carry our stories about who we are supposed to be in a career or even in our health, we can totally change those stories and totally impact not only our life, but the life of people around us. By doing this work, I was able to change my physical problems, and I was able to find a wonderful person that I've been married to. This year will be 10 years, and I have a wonderful relationship. I'm now doing a career that I love, and I am impacting not only my life, but the lives of people all around the world. So I welcome you to be part of my world. I am offering all of you guys for those online, so if you want to turn the camera around, everybody, and we're doing a live feed here. I'm offering everyone a free consultation, those people online and everyone in the room. But specifically for you guys here at CCIC, you have in your swag bag a half off your very first session. The other things that I do is I don't believe it's a one-size-fits-all for everyone. Everyone has their own needs. So I offer a lot of different wellness offerings for people. One of the ways I offer wellness is through retreats. I have a retreat that is just for women coming up, and that's going to be here in Damascus at the Still Meadows Retreat Center. It is a 4-day intensive retreat, but it's about play, and it's about moving that energy and giving you the tools that you can make the transformations that you want to make. My second retreat is going to be at the end of August, and this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm going to be taking 12 people to the Panamanian rainforest. We actually have a sister chick there. Her name is Anne Gordon de Bargon. Hey, Anne. And she is one of our sister chicks. She's actually the first international chick. And she actually is married to an indigenous man who lives in the Embera tribe in the Panamanian rainforest. Anne is also a biologist and an energy healer in her own right. And so we will be spending lots of time in the rainforest with the Embera tribe. We're going to be on a catamaran, being with whales and dolphins, and really imbuing that energy and getting the knowledge and energy from the area there. So it truly is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So if you guys would like to connect with me, for those of you guys online, I'll make sure that you guys have a link to my website after the podcast. And for those of you who would like to connect with me today, I do have my laptop so I can sign you up for your free consultation, or if you'd like to schedule your first initial appointment. You guys have any questions? Well, thank you guys for coming out today. I really appreciate you guys being here for me today. Bye.